On deck.
I love that. That's good. Please come forward for the member spotlight. We're about ready to begin. Hey, Dustin, you're live streaming this, right?
So good
For all
to
your
have Dominic
support, too.
back.
I know, it's wonderful.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. Chris Pettingale.
Lori Cannon.
Lori, good to see you this morning. I've seen you before.
Oh, I'm here.
I know, you're good. Everybody speaks about you being so good. Welcome to the member spotlight. Can I have everybody come forward? Can everyone hear me? Good. We're here for a very, very special member spotlight. It's no coincidence. If you guys have read the Gulf Breeze that Annika produces, you'll see that we named it The Third Time's a Charm. And in here, you're going to understand why it's a charm and the third time for these wonderful couple. And I was reminded, you know, as we were singing, I am yours, and you guys are ours. We're so happy because many of us saw them be married here with Pastor Kurt, and today they're going to have, and I would also say, there's no coincidence that they're doing their member spotlight in February. They chose it for a particular reason. And I'll let them know because they have so much to say. I'm going to turn it over to you guys, Robert and Mary Elizabeth Lynch. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So what I am hoping to share with you today is actually a continuous prayer of gratitude for wonderful life. So we're looking for our slides up here.
Oh. They're seeing something completely different from what you're seeing.
I know.
So okay. So this is your first slide.
But it's not up here, so
No,
we
it's
can't
not.
see it, so we don't know what we're saying.
I'm going to have to turn around. For some reason, it's not registering.
Thank you, Dawn.
Okay. So this isn't working now either. There we go.
No. This means we have to make our talk shorter, right? Because we're using up time.
Technical difficulties.
With,
Okay. So why don't you just speak, sweetheart? Just tell them you know what you're going to say.
we'll wait till we do it right.
Okay. So just to give you a little bit of background on what's happened, Mary Elizabeth and I had two very separate lives until the last 2 years. And so you're going to see a presentation about her life first, and then how it emerged, and then how my life came to be, and how we connected together, and the significance of what that connection means. Because that significance is not something that is just mechanical or just two people. There's a very spiritual dimension to what we're going to be talking about, and a very humbling dimension to it, because both of us have been just completely taken into a world that is spiritual, that feels godlike, and has been also filled with adventure and a few crises along the way. So we're going to get a chance to talk about those things.
And the third time as a charm is referring to the magical times that Robert and I were brought together that could not have happened without a divine plan. So that's the meaning of the third time's a charm. I guess we ignored God for a little while, huh?
And our journey has not been one that's been nice and even. This has been a roller coaster for both of us.
Not together, we're smooth, right?
Together we're smooth. But man, getting to this point was not an easy job for either one of us. It was quite an experience. So, sweetheart, I think you're going to have to just look over your shoulder. Because
What is
what's
Dustin,
what's there
what would
and there are
Dustin
just
like?
Two different things.
For some reason, the PowerPoint isn't working. You may have to just do it from that.
We can do that. Let's slide these chairs just a little bit. You have the clicker. So I consider my life a spiritual journey, and these 4 words, surviving and thriving and still questing and still adventuring, is a way that I would summarize. This is the beautiful estate home in Devon, England, that my great-great-grandmother left because she didn't have a choice. She was to be the lady of the house, but her husband was in a horse accident, so she no longer had any status. So instead of just staying around, hanging around, and being ordinary, she took her 2 sons to America, to Chicago and on to Kansas. This is the other side of the family, which they were pioneers coming west across our country and settling in Kansas. And this is just one of the huge farms that my great-great-grandfather gave to each of his family members. This is a bank that he started in Westmoreland, Kansas, and then he went on to the metropolis of Manhattan, Kansas, for this much larger bank. He was an entrepreneur, pioneer, and this is the hospital that I was born in that he gave to the community. My parents, I hope you can see their faces. They are adorable, and I feel like I was lucky to have them. They went to school together at Kansas State University. I have to say, in my mom's diary, there's a lot of dances that they went to midweek, so I don't know when they did their studying. My dad went on to write the definitive soybean book and the definitive corn book at the University of Illinois. And my mom was behind him. She was a dreamer, an imaginary person, and a pusher. My dad adored her, and I know she was part of it. He went on to China, and he was in the north, the first white man they'd ever seen. He was part of the Green Revolution in India. There I am. I believe I'm about 4 years old and playing on the streets, the rollerblading or the roller skating and the jacks and all those wonderful things we played when we were little. But in the backyard, I was the only child. I'm all by myself. And somehow I knew and I felt and I knew God was there and God was with me. I don't know how I knew. It was a wonderful upbringing, beautiful pictures. Underneath, my mom was a bit of a manic depressive, and it was hard. She was a pusher. I never did anything just perfect, but I would do anything to please her. I just wanted to make her happy, and I love that now about her. I went to the University of Illinois. I was in sorority life, but much more. I was active in big university gatherings. I think it was about 24,000 at the time. I loved being in the big field, playing. I was part of the Block I, which is the cheering section for the football games. I would design whatever our logos would be. And I was also a marcher, anti-Vietnam. It was the early 60s. That was kind of what we did. This is the man I met at college. I had never, ever met anyone so kind. Look at his eyes, and so bright. We married while in college and then went on to the Army. He went on to write the book Secretariat and was a sports writer as a columnist and then a senior writer at Sports Illustrated. Secretariat was a big part of our lives for quite a while because he early recognized and spent time at home writing the book. But we had the fun of knowing Ronnie Turcotte, the jockey. He'd bring his 4 kids over to play with our 4 kids. We lived right down the street from the owner of Secretary Penny Tweedy. And it was an exciting world, lots of balls. It was kind of what I'd always dreamed of. Meantime, same time, 4 little children are born in 5 3/4 years. The best time of my life. Each one was just such a treasure. Every day I was reading the Bible and reading spiritual inspiration, and it infused our lives, and I think it infused those children for later, for going through some maybe a little bit rougher times. Everything in our family was solved with love. Love could heal everything. That was the backyard where all the playing happened, freedom there. That's the grandmother visiting. This picture is just to show what everything was fun to them. All the time it was playing and laughing, and I just loved their world. I asked her dad to leave. It was just about Vietnam and alcohol, and we needed a little relief from chaos. And we worked it out. And look at those kids. They're teenagers. I was mom and dad to the teenagers. And my son went on to start businesses and then now sells businesses. The daughter to the right was a partner in a law firm in DC and now has special security clearance and writes contracts for DOD, for international contracts. And the daughter at the bottom there has a 100-acre organic farm and is a leader in her community. And her younger sister over to the left, same thing. She's big in her community. She's even involved with the Sundance Festival, and she scuba dives in Indonesia and builds houses in Costa Rica. And they're just all 4 full of energy. I'm not proud, of course. The 3 girls keep me energized, challenge me all the time, and I love it. All of them had wonderful little weddings, and the children started coming. But before that, interweaved with all of this were my careers. Through divine intervention, met this person who had an idea for me. He wanted me to develop it, and it was called corporate relocation. And corporate relocation meant taking care of the whole family. You can help them with money, and you can move that family, but who's helping them? So we had a program to help families and to help people find the right communities when they were relocating. It was so successful in New York, they said, will you come down to DC and do this for 2 years? So I brought my husband, the writer, and the 4 kids, and that became a huge successful project. Well, when it's successful, I'm okay, now I'm done. And I went on to go to New York City after the kids went to college and was part of the PBS brand new programs that needed to feasibility studies. Could we fund them? Millions of dollars for every program. I loved that because I thought the messages from PBS were really inspiring for all of us. Then, still in New York City, I went to work with Tiffany's for their corporate programs. Part of this was I'm marketing, and I can get into any company and at the executive C-suite level. Somehow I know how to do the right call at the right time to the right person. Do I know? It's always that Holy Spirit there, constantly was pushing me and guiding me. I worked hard and I had a lot of fun. I loved the city and the energy there. And one year, somebody introduced me to this guy, Robert, and we shared some spiritual things. It was, we were both at that time of searching. I, at that time, was studying interfaith religions, and it was a program under NYU. It was a 3-year program, and I was doing that while I was working, and I was ordained at St. John the Divine in New York City. Beautiful cathedral. I met Carson, another divine intervention. Why did I go to work for Tiffany's? Why was he a client of mine for 3 years and I never met him? My assistant dealt with his assistant, and one time we met, and that was it. We were married. I think I'd been single for about 16, 17 years, and I was ready. Look at those great kids that I inherited. Has 3 wonderful daughters. They weren't daughters, they were friends, and I was just their dad's wife, but I love those girls. And 5 wonderful grandchildren, an exciting family, very athletic, even almost to the Olympics. That was up in Banff. Our best man at our wedding was C. Everett Koop, and that was because Carson was doing a program for wellness, and it was called the Dr. C. Everett Koop. It was a great program. It made such a difference in our corporate attitudes. My children at that time were having their babies, and these are 5 of my 6. One more came very close behind. I'm in that world. It's my favorite world, the little children, the joy. They're all love. I loved babysitting them. I think they're so cute. They're so quirky. And these are the cousins at the beach, all fun. When Carson and I retired and moved to Naples, I got involved in a lot of volunteer work, the shelter, latchkey kids, the Philharmonic, boards. I think they see us coming here and welcome us in, and I just said yes. I didn't know what I was doing a lot of times. I didn't know the groups that I was representing. I didn't know how I was going to accomplish the funding that they asked me to do. But in all things throughout my life, the Holy Spirit was there directing the Christ Spirit. So this is sort of symbolic of how I've done my life. I just climb on. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going to do it, and the Holy Spirit helps me. Very quickly, the international travel was always dear, and I was so lucky. I've lived in Japan. I was in Cambodia at the time of the Tet Offensive with one daughter and my mother, and we were protected. All over the Orient I've been, all of the Mediterranean, Greece, of course, a favorite, France, Spain, Germany, exchange student there, England. I love that travel and seeing where we are so similar all over the world. It just kept coming up time and again. That's me on the Mekong River, probably outside of Laos, and it was a little tiny raft. I think I'm fearless sometimes, or stupid. I'm ending my part with the picture of my mother because it's my parents, God, the Holy Spirit, the Christ Spirit, all my ancestors. They are in me, and they have pushed me along and made it all happen. And I'm just full of that prayer of gratitude for all of that life. Okay, Robert. Thank you.
If you don't understand, you can't, you didn't understand before, you're going to understand now why I love this woman. Because she is so marvelous. So I'm going to tell my side of the story up until the time that we get together. And what I'm going to be doing... Louder? Oh, I disconnected.
You are a little independent, honey.
Okay. All right, I'll just use this. Okay, so what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to tell you a story that I've never told to anybody else in my life. Because most people introduce me in a conference situation and they tell all about my successes. I'm going to tell you about my transitions in life, how life changed, also about the crises that came in my life, the failures that I've had that most people never like to talk about, and essentially how the Holy Spirit helped me turn breakdowns into breakthroughs in my life. So I'd like to just first say about little comment by John Lennon. Life is what happens when you're planning something else. And that certainly has happened to me, and maybe to you too. And also a little story my grandmother always used to say. She said, if you don't know where you're going, Bobby, you'll end up someplace else. You know, you got to know where you're going in life, and sometimes have had to figure that out on the fly. So a little bit about my background. I come from an ancestry where my relatives, going back to the Revolution, to the War of 1812, and to the Civil War, were fighters for freedom, democracy, and liberty. And that was really important because it set the stage for what I was going to be as I continued to grow up. My mother and father were married in the middle of the war. My father here has just been commissioned in the Navy, just graduated from Brown University, and being ready to be sent off to war. When he was sent off to war, he commissioned a new ship in Bath, Maine, and that ship immediately got orders to go to the Pacific, and he had to fight in the Battle of Okinawa. This is where my first crisis happened in life, and I wasn't even born, because my father's situation, he was attacked by submarines, hit by submarines, hit by kamikazes, dive bombers, and it was only by divine intervention that gave me a divine destiny, because I might not have ever been here. So that was my first experience with the Holy Spirit, and I wasn't even born yet. So my mother and father were married, they had 2 boys, and we grew up in an old farmhouse way out in the country in Rhode Island. I was born in 1947. We had a wonderful history of the beauty of heritage and old-fashioned values. My grandmother said, Bobby, and I must have been only like 5 or 6 years old, you've got to have heroes in your life. Well, who should those heroes be? And she said, follow the fellows on Mount Rushmore. And that's coming full circle now, because I'm actually writing a book on what the people on Mount Rushmore would do to bring back America to its heritage. So it went on. We loved to travel, and my father loved fast cars. So he had the 1954 Oldsmobile was a fast car. My grandparents had moved to Key Biscayne, and so we traveled down to Florida every summer, and man, could he fly down those highways. This is way before Route 95 was built. And so when I was a kid in high school, you know, we load up the skis, the surfboard, you know, we go every place around, and I still, as some of you know, we still have a car that looks a lot like that now. I was raised as a Catholic, and I loved going to church, but I'd go to catechism, and as a little boy, I was just filled with all kinds of questions. Now, I remember very specifically back when I was about 7 years old, the nuns were teaching us about the 10 Commandments. And they got to this one called adultery. Now you have to remember, put yourself in the position of a 7-year-old kid. What does adultery mean? They said, thou shalt not commit adultery. Well, I look at my mother and father, they were adults. My grandparents were adults. You know, all of our older friends, aunts and uncles were adults. I thought adultery meant that was growing up to be an adult. Well, you know what happened? Whack, whack on the knuckles with a ruler. And I said, I still don't get it. And she, of course, the nun would never tell us what adultery meant, that it didn't mean growing up to be an adult. But that's what happens when you're filled with questions in life, and sometimes, as Minister Kirk said this morning, seek and ye shall find. Well, the only way you can seek and find is ask a lot of questions. I'm still asking a lot of questions, still getting whacked by that ruler, but you know, nevertheless, we went on to get confirmed, and I did get past that boundary in life. I was also a member of 4-H Club, and that was really wonderful because in 4-H Club, they taught me a lot about character, and I was also a Boy Scout. I loved being a Boy Scout. It was so much fun, because we learned all about what the Scout Creed is, and I still believe in the Scout Creed. It's still part of me, to be brave, clean, and reverent. But there's one thing that was missing on this list, having one bunch of fun with the guys. So I really found being a Boy Scout was a lot of fun, too. I had childhood heroes in sports. I love sports. Mickey Mantle, Ted Williams were my 2 sports heroes, and I wish I could have become a hitter as good as they were. But nevertheless, I never got to be that good. But I love playing second base and shortstop. And I'll always remember when I was 12 years old, I had my first double play. Now, a double play in baseball means the perfect timing between the second baseman, shortstop, and the first baseman. And I felt this rush because I realized what synergy and collaboration really was about. And there was a lesson inside that it was like the Holy Spirit saying, this is important, that little combination between people. Can you make that work in life? So I was also, my grandfather was an electronics technician, and he taught me at the age of 7 how to build radios. When I was, by the age of 11, I had gotten my federal communications license as a ham radio operator, and I had built these two receiver and transmitter. I still have them, they still work. But what was really interesting, I had to learn Morse code to do it. In those days, you communicated by Morse code. Still remember Morse code. It was fascinating, though, because one cold night in January 1959, I'll never forget it, I sent out a radio wave. Now remember, a radio wave is invisible. And we were bouncing the radio wave off of an antenna out to an elm tree across the yard, and the waves were bouncing off the ionosphere. Now this is metaphoric for something later in life. And all of a sudden, I'm talking with Australia. Can you imagine a little 11-year-old kid who built his own radio gear talking in Morse code to Australia? That was a big deal. It really was. I'll never forget it. It still sends a little chill down my spine and how wonderful it is. And I'm going to come back to this image again later. In the 60s, I got a surfboard, went out and earned a lot of money in order to buy a surfboard, have it shipped in from California. I loved to go surfing. Of course, we went in an old station wagon, and down, and that was a surfing safari. But in the back of my mind, there was also something else going on. It was a wonderful place to meet girls. So I went on to Brown University. I asked my mother and father when on the way to Brown, after I graduated high school, I said, what do you want me to be when I grow up? They gave me the best advice that I could ever receive, which is just leave the world a better place than you found it. And it's so powerful to this very day, what they told me. So I went on to major in international relations. I minored in engineering, electronics engineering. I was also a member of the ROTC and went on, also headed up our National Model United Nations contingent from the school. I was married, excuse me, the sequence was I was graduated, commissioned, and married on the same day, because I only had 4 days for a honeymoon over a weekend. And I commissioned a new ship in the Navy, the USS Trip, and that ship was then in a great big storm off of Cape Hatteras. 3 days, 60-foot waves, 130-knot winds, and almost capsized the ship. They had to redesign the ship to handle storms like this. It was so bad. And it was only through divine intervention that we survived that storm. It taught me something. But that wasn't a big crisis, because the next crisis was we got back to port, and immediately we got orders to go to Vietnam. Now I knew Vietnam was going to be a transformational experience. You don't go to war and come back the same person. So I started praying on the cruise to Vietnam, how was I going to handle this crisis? And I know the ministers always say, you're not supposed to make a bargain with God. But let me tell you, people in war make bargains with God. And I made the bargain with God. I said, if you let me out of this hellhole alive, I'll do something good in the world. And I've tried to keep that bargain. So the bargain with God was interesting. The first next assignment that I had was on Admiral Zumwalt's team, and we were there to create a new kind of a Navy. And it was a beautiful Navy because it had so many different dimensions of people working together. Instead of this hierarchy of, when I say jump, you say how high, it was, let's figure out how we're going to work on this together. Let's create teams. And this is a spiritual experience. If you ever read the book, It's My Ship, that essentially reflected this. We did a lot of race relations as well, getting blacks and whites to work together, because this is a time in the Vietnam era where people were pretty much polarized on a lot of issues. So while I was in Newport, Rhode Island, I moved to a little town called Warren, Rhode Island, bought an old sea captain's house. It cost $18,000, and it was a wreck. This is a picture after I helped fix up the house. And when I started walking around the town, I'd say, what do you think of this town? And what people would say is, what this town needs is a damn 4-alarm fire. I said, wait, there's something wrong with the spirit, the attitude. So the bargain with God started again. And the bargain with God was maybe I need to start right here. And I know I wanted to change the world, but I couldn't do that. I know I lived in the smallest state at the time. I couldn't change the state. Maybe I lived in the smallest town, in the smallest county, in the smallest state, but maybe I could change a neighborhood. So while I wasn't in the serving in the Navy in the evenings and the weekends, I said, let's try this. I was very soon elected to be president of the local historical society, and what we did is we tackled the whole town, but we also built an old house, and I started a whole career in neighborhood revitalization. Now, I didn't say historic preservation. Revitalization meant the revitalization of the spirit. How did we do that in a community itself? So that created a whole other movement in life, another great transition. I said, in order to understand how to change the world and change neighborhoods, I'm going to go to Harvard and get a degree and learn about building communities. And so I went to Harvard, got a degree in understanding leadership and organization development. My first job, and this creates an interesting transition, was in the city of Providence. And the city of Providence asked me to take 6 neighborhoods and take decrepit old buildings and turn them into beautiful places, but this meant building community. I loved it, did a fantastic job. The communities were all revitalizing. We had money due from housing and urban development, which would be equivalent to about $4 million today to help these particular neighborhoods. But I had one problem in the way. I was working for the mayor of the city of Providence, and he was not exactly, while he was a great visionary, he was also connected to the mob. Well, this creates its crisis because he had diverted the $4 million to his goombas, they call it in Italian. And when I discovered this and threatened to reveal what was going on to get the funds restored, my life was threatened. It was not just break your knees, we might kill you. Well, long story short, he ended up going to jail. This is one of the reasons why he went to jail for 5 years. But in the meantime, my life is threatened, and this creates a crisis. So what do I do when I hit a crisis like this? I have a sailboat in Warren, Rhode Island. I went out for sail. Let me start thinking. Now, this is very symbolic as well, because when you hit a crisis, you have 3 options: sink, swim, or find the Holy Spirit. And I really, this passage about the Holy Spirit, the wind that blows from where it comes and where it goes, is so important, because I wanted the Holy Spirit to give me some guidance as to what to do. And so what I did is I created a new organization called Ocean State Business Development. It still exists today. It's a nonprofit funding the small business development in Rhode Island. It's now done close to $1 billion worth of business. And this was going along really well. In the first 18 months, we became the 5th largest in the country. And in a little state in the middle of a massive recession and inflation, this is quite an accomplishment. But it also created a crisis, because we were housed in the Rhode Island Department of Economic Development. And so I had a lot of bureaucrats around us that were doing other kinds of financing, and I was ending up doing the work of 20 bureaucrats. And I was enjoying it. To me, it was just, what you do naturally. Well, we got to be so big and so good that they asked me to leave. And this is a crisis, because why am I having to leave? Because I created a disparity between them and us. And it was a good lesson to learn. So what do? Let's go for sail. Sink, swim, or spirit. And that beautiful Holy Spirit, which is the wind that filled my sails, as you know, the wind or the breath of God, says, okay, go on to do something more, take what you've done, go higher. Don't go lower, don't do the same thing, that's just swimming, go higher. So what I did was I found an old factory building on the east side of Providence, on the outskirts of Brown University. It was decrepit and falling apart. And I said, let's create a small business incubator and grow small businesses. And that went on to become the Richmond Square Business and Development Center. We had 65 little companies by the time we opened. The building was all decrepit, but we built a Harvard Tower on it, so it became a symbol. And it's still in business and still growing small businesses. And at the same time, I'm still living in Warren, Rhode Island. And one of the old buildings was a decrepit old sea captain's house, abandoned, had 4 fires in it. And my wife and I at the time said, you know, I'm chairman of the Revitalization Commission. Let's put our money where our mouth is, and let's go and see if we can transform this old building, because somebody wanted to tear it down and build a hot dog stand. It was only a block away from where I lived, and I didn't want a hot dog stand. Let's see what we can do with this. So we transformed this into the Nathaniel Porter Inn. This is a picture from Colonial Homes magazine. We were featured in many magazines around the country for what we did. And we won awards. This is one of the awards. We won one of America's finest restaurants. So I have a little bit of a restaurant background too. How I got into it, again, life is what happens when you're planning something else. So everything's going along well. We had wonderful Christmas celebrations there. And then crisis hits. The economy collapsed. I was on the verge of bankruptcy. My wife got scared. She ran off and with another man, and oh my God, because this is not what I had planned. There was a sinking feeling, folks, and this is very tender for me to talk about. But what happens? I had $1 million life insurance policy, and I was $1 million in debt. Not because I did something wrong, but because the economy flipped upside down. Some of you know what that feels like. What do? I was depressed. When I say depressed, because everything I tried to do failed. There was nothing I could get out of this situation. I contemplated suicide. It was the easiest way out. Give my wife the $1 million, okay, get out of all the debt, everything disappears. I'm driving down the road at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I realize I'm a failure, I can't get out of it, I'm going to commit suicide. The speedometer on my car is going 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 miles an hour. Down the road about half a mile, there's a bridge abutment. I unbuckle my seatbelt. And I imagine myself in church, in my coffin, closed coffin, because nobody wants to see how beaten up I am, how bloody I am. Outside the coffin, my best friend, Rob Edwards, is crying, and he said, "It's so sad, he had so much to live for." At that moment, I realized the Holy Spirit was speaking through him, through the coffin. I took my foot off the gas pedal, slowed down, and went on with life. The Holy Spirit had intervened, and it was powerful. It's so important to me. Let's go out for sale. Let's figure out what to do next. And so what I did is I took that beauty of life itself and said, let me write some books about what the world could be. Let me just say what I found. I asked the most fundamental question I think one can ever ask in life. Why did God put me on this earth? And the Holy Spirit spoke. It took a while. Eventually, the Holy Spirit says, it's to create breakthroughs in the architecture of collaboration, in the quest of synergy. This is very important because it's going to keep coming back again in life. So I went on to write 3 books. The last one is still in print. It's in its 5th edition. We created the whole profession called strategic alliances. How do you get people to work together across their differences? Fascinating thing. I went on to speak all over the world, did thousands of presentations about how to work collaboration, how to be a better leader. And in one of those, I got to New York while I was teaching at the American Management Association. And guess who I meet? This lovely lady right here, she was so remarkable. The Holy Spirit had definitely intervened in our lives. And
So just almost exactly 2 years ago, I finally said yes to one of his text messages. I hadn't seen him since COVID. I'd forgotten to invite him to Carson's celebration of life and said yes to an invitation to go to a Valentine's Day party. And it was like instant. Oh my gosh. My prayer to God had been, okay, God, you're in charge. You find somebody for me. You know better what's good for me. Okay, God, find somebody for me. By the time I left your house, it's him. I knew him all the time. Anyway, you just know things. You just know somebody is right for you.
so this is divine destiny that brought us together. And the voice of the divine eternal was speaking to both of us. And the divine eternal was saying something very powerful. A profound inner voice has been whispering in deep, soft tones and urging you.
Look farther. Search deeper. Listen to what you knew when you were just a very young child. Stretch into the realm where Spirit determines you for a bold, glorious future.
Our souls yearn to connect with our spiritual center. We sense our dance of life is yet to unfold. Now follow this river upstream to its source.
We cannot rest until we discover the treasure. The treasure is the true meaning of life beyond the constraints of our earthly orbit. The abundant energies of Spirit are... Oh, I forgot. Oh, we did get married. We had a proposal.
Yes.
We're in Providence, and Robert asked me to marry him. Of course, I say yes. But it can't be, any ordinary thing. It has to be on a gondola.
In the city of divine providence.
Ah. So Robert had to meet my children and the grandchildren, and we had already planned a family cruise in Greece. And so they said, okay, Mom, you can bring him. And he had to meet 17 people in my family. Well, you're pretty courageous, honey. Anyway, on that cruise,
We had a devotion and commitment ceremony, and it was really beautiful. String quartet, big cake, and a ceremonial leader. And we made essentially our vows prior to our being married to show her children that I was really serious, but I was going to take good care of Mom and revitalize any of the spirit that she had after the death of her past husband.
So here we are. Some of you were there too with Pastor Kurt with a beautiful, fabulous ceremony.
And the other pastor is Rick Blees from the Lutheran Church, from the church that I still belong to. We belong to 2 churches right now. And we just had a wonderful ceremony, cutting the cake.
And this is all the family. It's my children, their spouses, and Carson's daughter that lives in the United States was there, and most of the grandchildren. I hope you see and feel all that energy and love and Holy Spirit. Look at their faces and all the smiles. That's our story.
So one of our first trips was to go to Paris, to Notre Dame for Easter service, where we had a wonderful time. We've also spent each Christmas in New York City.
Mm-hmm. And guess who loves the Rockettes?
I'd never seen the Rockettes until I met her. So it was a wonderful Christmas spectacular. And I must say, this is the most delightful woman I have ever met. We are really wonderfully in love. And I can say she's positive, she's happy, and I just love being there with her.
Ditto.
And
here we are, flying through the jungles in Costa Rica, going fast, full of fun, and I like that image.
zip lining. But, how do you turn breakdowns into breakthroughs is one of the key issues that we deal with. And the Holy Spirit has given us some very interesting guidance, because we're living in a world today where there's an awful lot of fragmentation. And people aren't building the kind of friendships that we really think are so important. The Holy Spirit said, create the architecture of friendship. Well, what does that mean? So the architecture of friendship has become something that she and I are engaged in deeply right now.
And I think the whole point is the joy and the connection and the love. And I think you have a slide on that.
Yeah, because this is the book we are writing, and it's allowed us to get into the Holy Spirit in some unique ways. So I want to just tell you about, remember I was communicating at 11 years old, bouncing signals off the ionosphere, invisible radio waves. Well, think of your soul as a receiver and transmitter of the Holy Spirit, and that we communicate with divinity. And so I'm still doing that with her, and we're starting to really crack the code of the Christ Spirit and the Holy Spirit. And we think of the Holy Spirit as divine energy. And those divine energies are fourfold.
And it's first love, and then joy comes, and then creation, and then wisdom that we don't know where it comes from, but it's there.
And so those divine energies, when they're working together, bring what we call exponential energies. Those exponential energies show up as in one form, which is a state of being, and the other form, the state of action. And when you are in the state of grace, it's when the four divine energies are working and the action is synergistic. The whole is greater than the parts. 1 + 1 = 3 or even more. And so that's where we are in our lives right now. And that brings us to the last slide. And that is, as Garfield is saying here, God put me on this earth to do just so many things.
And right now, we've got so many things on our list that's so far behind that we'll never, ever even die.
That's because the Holy Spirit is with us, and we hope the Holy Spirit is with you too. I know the Holy Spirit is there for all of us.
Much. What a wonderful way to end this day full of blessings. How can we not feel so thankful to God for all we have experienced from the time we walked into this church, whether you started with prayer meeting and Sunday school, or you started later coming to major service. We have just been blessed, blessed, and more blessed. And you now can see, I want to just say thank you so much to both of you. What a joy to work with both of these guys. And I talked with them independently because they had so much to talk about and so much to hear, and it was just wonderful. And you can see from all this member spotlights that we've done why I continue to help bring that forward, because it's been such a blessing to me to get to know so many people here in our church and to bring them to you and to see the connection that happens between these presenters.
Thank you, thank you.
And all of you in your hearts and souls. We are all one, and we love each other so much. And it's all due to our leadership from Pastor Kurt. And all the times his saying, put a love on them. And we're putting on a big love on you today with all that you've gone through, all I've gone through, all you guys have gone through. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, it was wonderful.
We're so blessed. We're at a point that I know people are yearning to kind of leave. So if you have questions, come up and talk with these dear people. Your lives are so full, I don't even know where anybody